After the intro comes the first verse, during which both Hank and Bruce play rhythm guitar strums. Hank is really playing joint rhythm guitar here. First of all, I'll show you what I believe Hank did. In fact, I know he did this kind of thing because I've seen it in some performance footage. He plays a fragment of a G shape, just for clarity. If we were to play a G chord, like that or like that, using the Cage system for the key of D, we'd come up with this. More to the point, watch what happens as I deconstruct this. Hank just plays that. He plays that for sure. So that's a fragment of a G shape in the key of D. The song's in the key of D. It's the first chord of the key, the tonic chord. So quite simply, Hank is playing strings 4, 3 and 2 with his index finger at the 7th fret. The note of A, the note of D and the note of F sharp. Then on beat 2, he plays a fragment of a G chord, and for clarity, and as a mini tutorial in itself, there is a G chord as a C shape. Watch an everyday C moved up to there, but refingered like that. Let me deconstruct it to show you what a Hank actually plays. Remove the little finger, reduce the bar to just that. I'm not even playing, and nor is Hank playing, the top string. It's really just those 3 notes. To be clear, you don't really have to do a bar, although I would assert that you should, because you've just played the fragment of a D, then you play a fragment of a G. It's simply this, that for 2 strums, that for 2 strums. Those notes, to be extra clear, are B on the 9th fret of the 4th string, D, a common tone to both D and G, on the 7th fret of the 3rd string, and the note of G itself on the 8th fret of the 2nd string. This is very much in the style of Buddy Holly, may I say. So Hank does a strum, 2 strums in fact, on D, the 2nd of which is staccato. Then he does the same thing on the G chord. 1 held chord, 1 staccato. Do be careful, of course, not to have any of the other notes ringing. So have perhaps your little finger across. I'm not pressing down with that. I'm just resting it across those strings, just in case I catch them, because what I don't want is... So, let's try that at reduced tempo. 2, 3, 4. And you do that 3 times, as in up to tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then it goes back to the D in the 4th bar of the verse, and I believe drops down to an A, like so. It resembles an F shape. On strings 4, 3 and 2 only. And for clarity and for reference, I'll show you, according to the Cage system, A as an E shape. You could play the whole chord if you wish. I do believe Hank, for consistency, was playing that to that, and then when he plays the A, he does that. Okay, having shown you basically what Hank is doing, and he never did it the same way twice, it was along those lines, a nice Buddy Holly style, jing, 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 jing. What Bruce did on electric guitar, by the way, this was one of those occasions where Bruce Welch was playing on electric guitar. He was playing, I would imagine, down near the nut, quite simply D to G. Now, his rhythm was a little livelier. In my music notes, I've written da 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 da. That's 1 and 2, 3 and 4, da 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 da. But it's not always that mechanical. It's obviously much more lively. You've got to instill it with a sense of excitement. So here it is in its raw mechanical form, so to speak. 1, 2, 3, verse. But wouldn't you agree that sounds a little bit cold and dry? So watch me as I begin with that, and then, like Bruce did, I believe, gradually starts to liven it up, slowly at first. With the odd little fast scratch there. If I may, I'm going to guide you through this. I'm going to command you to join in with me as we accelerate. Then I think you'll start to get the feel for it. Beginning slowly. 2, 3, 4. Speed up. Let's just loop this. Let's just loop it. You may wish to use all downstrokes with the occasional upstroke. Get the idea? You can see me rocking around there. Once we get into it, it's much more natural. Get the idea? So that's the kind of thing that Bruce is playing in the background. For clarity, I believe Hank is doing something a little simpler. Remember? Sorry. The simplicity of what Hank is doing with the more lively, dare I say, rhythm guitar playing, the primary rhythm guitar playing of Bruce Welch. Okay, let's move on. What I'd like to do next, if I may, is simply dictate the chord sequence, which is 2 beats of D, 2 beats of G, as previously shown. You do that 3 times. So it's D, G, D, G, D, G, then D, A. These are half bars or 2 beats each. Okay? Then, starting from the 5th bar of the verse, it goes D, G just once, then D, B minor. D, and I'm thinking of Bruce's part here, D to B minor. I've discussed this elsewhere on another tune, but for current purposes, here it is again, B minor. I mentioned it in Dance On, by the way. But here it is for Please Don't Tease. Bar, it doesn't have to be a full bar. I would use a partial bar from the 5th string across to the 1st string, like that. Butting your index finger up against the 6th string, by the way, so we don't hear the 6th string. It's muted. And then you make an A minor kind of shape using finger 3, 4 tucked in underneath, and finger 2. That's the note of B, the note of F sharp, the note of B again up the octave, the note of D, and possibly the note of F sharp on the top string, B minor. It's tempting to suggest that the D could be played like so. However, I've led you to believe, which I believe is correct, that there's an open D. So I would have thought Bruce would have gone. That's what I believe it was. Okay, we're into the 7th bar of the verse. That's a D to B minor. Then E7, and let me clarify what I believe Bruce did. Quite simply an open position E with the little finger on the D note on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. However, bearing in mind that Hank, remember, was up here, surely Hank would have done possibly that, but more likely that. That's more of the kind of chord that many 60s oriented guitarists would do. For clarity, that's like a C7 shape in E. That's the 7th fret of the 5th string, 4th string, 6th fret, little finger tucked in on the 3rd string, 7th fret, and index finger on the 2nd string, 5th fret. That's E7. So Hank plays that, but Bruce, I believe, played down there. Then there's a bar of A. Hank would no doubt have gone from there to there, an E-shaped A, while Bruce would surely have gone from that E7 to that A. Fingered however you wish, A. Incidentally, that's where the bass does that, bass does that, obviously in its own octave, for a point of reference, when the bass goes, does that bit there. Bruce and Hank don't play in unison with that, they just strum the chord of A. Continuing, in bar 9 of the verse, it's D to G, then again D to G, then again D to G, then it's 4 strums on A, then it's a stab on G. To be honest, I've no way of knowing for sure what they did in the studio. How could anybody know that? Only the guys themselves could tell you. I would propose either a bar E shape at the 3rd fret, or of course, an open G. I would assert that this would be easier to control for obvious reasons. You can just de-fret, you can release the pressure and get a nice clean. The danger is, it's not a big problem, but the danger is if you play an open G, the notes are still ringing. So to be professional about it, you'd have to use your strumming hand to go. Once again, if you don't stop it, it's likely to go and have some extraneous noise, which would interfere with the vocal, of course. So if you do choose to use an open G, either fingered like so or like so, that's your choice, you should cut off there. Okay, so you've done a single stab on a G chord, then you do 2 stabs on beats 1 and 3, D to B minor. I've already shown you D, it's a everyday beginner's D, to a B minor, which I've already shown you. Then, now listen carefully, and I'm not being disrespectful, but the bass guitar always plays an E next, and you'd expect there to be an E minor. You'd expect E minor to A. Many, many songs would go what we call in compositional terms a 2-5-1. You'd think it's, but it's not. And I say this with respect, despite there being an E note, and it is there every time from the bass guitar, the chord is actually rather unclear. However, I'm certain that it's a D to an A to a D to an A. Simply D, A, D, A. Please don't tease. If I may, I'll just sing the note that Cliff sings. Please. He ends up on an F sharp, which, wouldn't you agree, makes much more sense harmonically, in harmony with a D chord. Please, please don't tease. So I believe that it's a D to an A to a D to an A. Then, quite simply, there's another verse that's more or less the same. Being human, the guys would have got a bit more excited about it and got a bit more lively. You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the second verse, instead of going D, A, D, A, it goes D, A, D, D7. And it's probably Bruce that plays the D7. D, A, as in, please don't tease. Then there's a D7. And then we're going into the middle 8, which we'll look at next.